What's up, Raider Nation? Raider Alex, back with another video for you. If you're new to the channel and love all things Raiders, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated with more content like this. Now let's dive right into today's topic. Black Monday has come and gone for the Raiders, and some big news has dropped about the future of this team. This morning, our head coach, Antonio Pierce, made it clear to the media that he's likely staying on as the Raiders' head coach for the 2025 season. When Antonio Pierce was hired last year, he signed a 2-year contract, and it looks like Mark Davis is sticking to that plan. He's giving Pierce the full 2 years to turn things around. I've got to admit, I'm pretty surprised by this news. Everything seemed to point to the Raiders potentially moving on from him, especially after his press conference yesterday. From his body language and the way he spoke, he seemed pretty defeated, like he had already accepted he wouldn't be back. But, as it turns out, I was wrong. Antonio Pierce will return for the 2025 season, and we'll see what he can do to make things right. I have to admit, I'm a bit surprised by this decision too. Personally, I didn't feel like Mark Davis had a lot of confidence in Antonio Pierce. After a rough season with a 4-13 record and going 0-6 in the AFC West, I thought for sure the Raiders would move on. The last time we had such a miserable divisional record was almost 20 years ago, back when we had Art Shell as head coach, and he was fired after that season. This year we even went through a 10-game losing streak, and we took several losses by 10 points or more. It just wasn't a good season overall, but with all that said, I think it's fair to give Antonio Pierce one more season. Ideally, you don't want to fire a head coach after just 1 year. Most coaches get at least 2 seasons to show what they can do, to fully assess the talent and how they can turn things around. It's not very common to see a coach fired after just 1 year, though we did see it with the Patriots firing their first-year head coach, Jerod Mayo, just yesterday. Still, at least Mark Davis is showing some improvement in terms of stability for the franchise. Giving Pierce another shot is the right move, especially considering how many unfortunate events happened this season, including numerous injuries to key defensive starters. Looking back at this season, there were definitely some big issues we didn't address. Our quarterback situation was a mess, and we made the wrong choice in hiring offensive coordinator Mick Lombardi. The offensive line really struggled, especially early on, and we couldn't get a solid run game going. So, yeah, it was just a tough season all around. With all that in mind, you could argue that it's not entirely fair to judge Antonio Pierce's performance based on this past season and fire him right away. He definitely deserves another shot. Personally, I'm okay with that decision. Another factor to consider is the current coaching landscape. If the Raiders had decided to fire Pierce, the pickings would have been slim when it comes to finding a new head coach. There aren't a lot of great candidates out there, and especially no guarantees that someone would be willing to come to the Raiders. Mike Vrabel, for example, looks like he's heading to the Patriots, and the only real hope we had was to try and land a young, up-and-coming offensive mind like Ben Johnson. But even then, there's no guarantee he would have come to Vegas. It's possible he'd go elsewhere. So when you look at it, it makes sense that they decided to stick with Pierce. The situation is just different from last year, when there were better coaching options available. When you look at other teams like the Raiders have had in the past with someone like Jim Harbaugh, the situation isn't quite the same this year. So, with that in mind, Antonio Pierce is going to get another season to prove himself. But make no mistake, this is a make-or-break year for him. He has to turn things around. We simply can't afford to stay a bad football team for much longer. He needs to get some wins on the board, and it's going to start with finding the right quarterback. The quarterback position has to be addressed. I think the Raiders will need to draft a young quarterback, someone who can start building for the future. Now, I'm not saying he'll be the immediate savior, but at least if we bring in someone fresh, we can start figuring out whether he's the guy to lead us moving forward. This offseason, the focus needs to be on improving key areas. First, the offensive line needs serious attention, especially the interior. We've got to get stronger up front. We also need to address the running back position. More depth and talent there would go a long way. Defensively, we could use a couple more linebackers to shore up that area. And let's not forget, we need to fix the defense as a whole. Before the season, expectations were high for this unit, but for various reasons, they just didn't deliver. Sure, injuries played a part, but there were other issues too. At times, it seemed like we weren't being coached up properly. So, it's clear, this offseason is going to be huge for Antonio Pierce. He's got a lot of work ahead of him to get this team on track. I'm glad Antonio Pierce is getting another shot, but I can't say I'm fully confident he'll be able to turn things around. There's still a lot of work to be done. We all knew he was a first-year head coach, so there was bound to be a learning curve. But even now, there are issues that he hasn't fully addressed or improved, and that's something he'll need to work on if he's going to succeed. One of the big question marks heading into next season is the coaching staff. Antonio Pierce mentioned that for now, there won't be any changes to the staff. But honestly, that could change. One major thing that needs to be figured out is the defensive coordinator position. Patrick Graham's contract is up, and I'm not sure when exactly it expires, but this was his final year under contract. So, we'll have to decide if he's coming back, if we'll extend him, or if we'll go in a different direction for the defense. For Antonio Pierce, getting that coaching decision right is huge. He'll need to make sure the staff is in place to support him. And when it comes to the offensive side of things, what will he do with the offensive coordinator? Is he willing to take another risk? Or will he make some necessary changes there as well? Especially with the Raiders likely set to draft a young quarterback, it's crucial to have the right coach to help develop him. That includes not only the rookie quarterback, but also whoever else is under center, like Aiden O'Connell, who's still a young QB as well. We'll need a solid offensive-minded coordinator who can create a system that supports the growth of these quarterbacks. Antonio Pierce will have to get that right too. But if he's sticking around, there are definitely areas he needs to improve in 2025. One thing that stood out to me this season were some questionable decisions he made. For example, in the season opener against the Chargers, on a 4th and 1 at the Chargers' 43-yard line, he chose to punt instead of going for it. That was a questionable call in my opinion. The analytics heavily favored going for it in that situation, but Pierce opted to punt, and that decision didn't work out in our favor. Another area where Pierce needs to improve is in clock management and challenges. There were several times when he threw the red challenge flag on plays that seemed like obvious calls that really didn't need challenging. These are the types of in-game decisions that can make or break a season, and they're things that Pierce will have to get better at if he wants to succeed in 2025. Decisions like that can be tough, especially in a division with coaches like Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and Sean Payton. If Antonio Pierce wants to stick around for the long term, he's going to have to make some serious improvements next season. The competition in the AFC West isn't easy, and every little mistake can cost us. But Raider Nation, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with the decision to keep Antonio Pierce as head coach? Were you surprised by the move? Are you happy with it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think. With that said, that's all I've got for today's video. If you're new to the channel and you love Raiders content like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.